Hey, Ben, you have said pretty vocally on a lot of occasions that you and Reform would like to destroy the Conservative Party. You don't really have much work to do. They seem to be doing it for you.
Well, they are. And I mean, Peter said that at the moment the Conservative Party seems to be split, but I would argue the Conservative Party has always been split. They're not a broad church, they're a divided church. And at times you can put sticking plaster over that division and you can give the appearance of coherency and a unified approach to governance. But actually, they're inherently divided. They're divided over Brexit, whether or not we should stay close to the EU or whether we should have a clean break. And actually, as a result, we've got a complete fudge with the EU, Northern Ireland left behind, which Peter Cardwell knows very well, obviously being from Northern Ireland, hitched at the hip in a regulatory way with the EU, our fishing waters handed over, and of course the commitment to the European Court of Human Rights, which is at the centre of the debate over Rwanda. All of that comes through Brexit, and then we've got divisions also on this inexorable march towards net zero. One Nation Tories want the march to net zero. Those who have got a bit of common sense amongst them recognise that it's economically emasculating for the UK. And the same issues with immigration. The Conservative Party is not unified on immigration. One Nation Tories completely blind to the impact it's having on our own domestic labour force as well as the social fabric of our country. And those with a bit of common sense recognising all the problems with immigration. And the same goes for taxation. Those Tories who, again, have a bit of common sense, recognise that taxes have to be cut, and those on the One Nation side quite happy to go along with 25 years of progressive socialism, which has landed the country with the highest debt level since World War II, the highest taxes since World War II, a reducing GDP per capita, productivity in trouble. The reason the country is suffering so badly is because we have a divided Conservative Party which doesn't have an ideology, which is all well and good when you don't have to govern much because, the economic and cultural and all other landscapes are pretty much okay. But we've had a really tough 3 or 4 years for the United Kingdom, and those divisions have manifested themselves in an inability to govern, which brings me squarely back to where you started, Alex, which is the obliteration of the Tory party.
Ben, I think there are 3 key problems with the Safety of Rwanda bill, which is its technical name. One is just that. I just don't understand how more than 600 people, most of whom have never been to Rwanda, don't know anything about it, couldn't point to it on a map, can sit there and say, well, we vote that Rwanda is safe. Can't do that without knowing about it. Secondly, and this is a big problem, that Rishi's plan will still allow individual appeals. They can use the term a vanishingly small number as much as they like. We know that every migrant, on the off chance they ever do get sent to Rwanda, every single one of them will appeal, and that will get caught up in the courts. Therefore, the scheme won't work. And the third point is this. Rishi could avoid all of his nightmares, all of his headaches today by leaving the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, but he won't because he never saw a globalist club that he didn't want to be a member of. And legal experts, including, I believe, the Attorney General, have concluded that this scheme has a 50% chance of being rejected by the ECHR. So once again, we'll be off to a quick phone call to Strasbourg where some judge in a pub will say, that's illegal, and the plane won't get off, and we will be back to square one. If we don't leave the ECHR, we will never, ever send anyone to Rwanda.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm not sure sending anyone to Rwanda sorts anything, to be honest, because on the one hand, they say, that it acts as a deterrent. It would act as a deterrent, the threat of going to Rwanda. At the same time, they say it's a perfectly safe, lovely country, and look at all the wonderful facilities we've set up in Rwanda. They're trying to be a bit of a Schrodinger's cat here, trying to sell it to the public that Rwanda will act as a deterrent and stop the boats, and sell it to those who are obsessed with the rights of people leaving France, coming to this country illegally, that actually it's a perfectly safe country to go to. It doesn't work at that level. But you've hit a very important point on the European Convention of Human Rights, which is that human rights law, for a start, works at an individual's level. you can have a blanket approval for a scheme like Rwanda, but you can never step away from the individual when it comes to assessing whether they should or should not be deported to Rwanda. So every individual will have their case heard. And that's the problem of being inside this convention. The other problem, as again you rightly pointed out, Kevin, is that the ECHR stands in opposition to the overall scheme. So unless there's a stark carve-out saying, notwithstanding the provisions of the European Convention of Human Rights, we are going to send people to Rwanda, unless there's that clear cutout, it will be impossible to do it. And this brings me on to the third thing. Even though I'm not a fan of the Rwanda scheme, and I think it's never going to act as a deterrent to the boats. The only way to stop the boats is actually physically stop the boats. But on the European Court of Human Rights, it is itself, in my view now, acting in breach of human rights. Article 21 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights requires that peoples are governed democratically. But the European Convention of Human Rights makes up laws as it goes along, for example, blocking Rwanda. And it has no democratic mandate to stand in the way of a democratically elected government. But that is what it's doing. And if it did that once in a while, that would be fine. But from 1946 to 1995, in its existence, it interfered about 1,000 times, just under 1,000 times, in sovereign states' decisions. Since 1995, it's interfered 23,000 times. The European Court of Human Rights is out of control.